Okay, welcome Bio 20s. So this is our recording on our next lesson, which introduces the structures of the heart and the pathway that blood will travel through the heart and the body. Before we go into the actual pathway and how the heart is pumping, I want you to get out a separate piece of paper and create a chart very similar to what you see on the computer screen right now. So the difference between arteries, veins, and capillaries. So this should have been learned yesterday in your research on the difference between arteries, veins, and capillaries. So stuff we already know is the fact that arteries are moving away from the heart. Okay, veins move toward the heart, and then our capillaries is where we have gas exchange. So gas exchange is the movement of gases from uh, in and out of the cells or in and out of the capillaries that are surrounding the alveoli. So that is something you already know from the respiratory system because we did talk about that in the respiratory system. The other things that you would have learned in your research yesterday is arteries are very thick walled. Okay, now the reason that they are thick walled is because there is high pressure existing within those arteries because they are pumping blood away from the heart. So I'll make that connection as I talk about the heart as it's pumping today in today's lesson. But you do need to know that they are high pressure. So since you have a lot of pressure existing within those arteries, you want to make sure that the walls are very thick to be able to withstand the amount of pressure coming into those arteries. Now, the fact that they're thick walled means that there's going to be many different layers that exist within the artery walls. And part of these layers that you need to know, you don't need to know the specific names of the layers, you just need to know there are many layers. And one of those layers is a muscle layer. Okay, so a muscle layer. They are actually smooth muscles. And anytime we have smooth muscles, they are considered involuntary muscles. And involuntary muscles we don't control. Our body just knows to do it or sorry, 1 second. So the involuntary muscles means that we don't control them. They just naturally do what they need to do when they need to do it. And it is controlled by our brain. I'm going to more than likely send home a package during Christmas break as a bonus package, which will include the different muscle groups located within our body. So it'll give you more info on those. Okay, the next one is veins. So veins, they are relatively thick-walled, but they're thinner than arteries. So I'm going to write thinner than arteries. Now, their pressure, they have lower pressure than arteries. Sorry, it's really hard to write here. So lower pressure than arteries, but it's higher pressure than capillaries. Okay, so your pressure will drop as blood is moving from an artery to a capillary, and then the pressure will go up just a tad as it moves into the vein. Okay, these guys, important thing about them is that they also have muscles that line them, so they also have smooth muscles, but they don't have as much smooth muscle as the arteries because they're not as thick walled. Okay, and one of the more important things is they contain valves. This is the only blood vessel in the body that does contain valves. So if you see valves on a diagram, that has to be a vein. Okay. Um, and they are always moving the blood towards the heart. For our capillaries are 1 cell thick. So if we're to put this in terms of thickness, arteries would be thickest, then veins, and then capillaries, because capillaries you need to be super thin in order to allow gas exchange. This is what is allowing the connection between arteries and veins. I am really sorry that the writing is super messy, but it is the best I can do under the circumstances. Okay, so that is the difference between your arteries, veins, and capillaries. You would have learned a little more detail in the lesson yesterday as you did your research, but that's a quick summary of the differences between them. Now, we do know that arteries are connected to capillaries through your smaller arteries called arterioles. So you need to know the connection or the pathway that blood is flowing through the body. So I'm just going to be moving down here for a bit because I'm going to draw a little bit of a diagram the best I can. So what we have here is this would be your main artery. The artery will branch into smaller arterioles, and then they will branch into smaller blood vessels. Now, this is just one diagram. It's not the best diagram, but this is showing you the interconnective parts between the different blood vessels. Okay, and I'll label this after. So this will be an artery. The smaller one right here is your arteriole. These smaller ones in the middle are your capillaries. These are your venules, and these are your veins. So blood is always going to flow from an artery to an arteriole to a capillary to a venule to a vein. And we have gas exchange happening within this capillary bed. So there's your review of your blood vessels. And I'm just going to pause the video for a second to open up the notes package so you can do and get out your notes package while I do this. Okay, so this is page 7 in your notes package. You will need to get out a red, blue pen as well. You can also get out a purple pen if you so wish. I don't know if I'll be using it or just another color pen. So a red and a blue will be beneficial to help color code for yourself. So we're going to start with the structures of the heart. I will probably only get to the heart structures today, but we'll see how far we get. So that being said, our first question is asking, what did the pleural membrane do for the lung? So this is relating back to our respiratory system. So the pleural membrane was our membrane that surrounds the lungs. Okay, so it surrounds lungs and allows lungs to expand with intercostal muscle movement. Okay, so the fact that you have those that pleural membrane located on the inside of the rib cage, as well as the one lining the lungs as well, that keeps those two membranes stuck together. And when the ribs expand, it expands the lungs, so it pulls the lungs out. So how are the heart and the lungs connected? So the lungs supply oxygen, O2, to body, and get rid of CO2 while heart pumps blood to and from lungs. So you need the heart to actually pump the blood to the lungs so that the lungs can take the blood and allow it to become oxygenated. And then it takes the deoxygenated blood to become oxygenated. Sorry, that's a roundabout way of saying that blood becomes oxygenated in the lungs, and it heart is sending deoxygenated blood to the lungs to be oxygenated. Sorry. Now, moving down, we have the pericardium. So we're going to start with the outside structure of the heart. So the pericardium is a very thin membrane that is surrounding the heart itself. So this contains a fluid that is going to decrease friction between the membrane and the outer wall of the heart. So this is actually a protective layer for the heart itself. So it's very similar to what the pleural membrane was doing for the lungs, but the heart itself can pump by itself. It doesn't need this membrane to help it. So it's just a protective layer rather than aiding in the movement of the heart. So we have one example of a scenario. I always like to give scenarios when it comes to bio because it makes it more realistic. So it says patient Z, Zayden, has fluid buildup in the pericardium. So it is saying that you have your heart muscle. So take a fist, make a fist. That's your heart. You have a bag around your fist, and then there's fluid between the bag and the hand, or the pericardium and your hand. So there's more fluid existing within that area than there normally is. And I'm asking you here, what symptoms would the patient experience and why? So your heart is located in the roughly in the center of your chest, behind the breastbone, and it's also located where your lungs are. So in your thoracic cavity, you have your lungs and you have your heart. Your heart can only pump so far because it has all of the other internal organs located around it. So it can't expand unlimitedly or unlimitlessly. There has to be a finite amount of contraction in the heart. So if you have this extra fluid, do you think that the heart would be able to expand as much as it normally would? I really wish you could answer this, but unfortunately you can't. Okay, so no, heart would not be able to expand as much. Therefore, so if it cannot pump as much or expand as much, this means less blood moving through body. If there is less blood moving through the body, that means less O2 getting to cells. Therefore, lower cellular respiration. And if I have lower cellular respiration, that means that I get less ATP. So this means equals lower ATP. And if you have lower ATP, it means you have less energy. So a symptom will be very, very tired, extreme tired, lethargic. But your body or your brain doesn't know what's going on. All your brain knows is you need oxygen. So your brain is going to continually send a message to your brain or to your heart to tell your heart to pump. So what you might see is a higher heart rate because your body still needs to get oxygen and it needs to accommodate the less oxygen it is getting per pump. So you have a higher heart rate because that means it's going to beat more to still try to get the oxygen to the cells. So higher heart rate, which would also equal a higher breathing rate. Okay. Okay, now we get to move on to the structures of the heart. So you will have to be able to label a heart diagram for me, both either outside version or inside version. Okay, now inside version I am referring to a cross section. So I'm actually going to start with page 9. So turn to page 9. I'm going to try to make mine bigger or smaller so that I can see the whole diagram. And this is where your red and blue colors come into play. So this is a cross section of a heart. Anytime we talk about cross section, what we're really talking about is we're taking the structure that we're looking at and we're cutting it in half. Okay, so we've cut the heart in half. This is what the heart looks like when it's cut in half. Okay, I'm going to start with my blue pen. Okay, so because it's already blue. And we should know from our respiratory system that blue means deoxygenated. So I'm going to put that up top here. So blue equals deoxygenated, which means high CO2 or a lot of CO2. I'm going to turn it to my, whenever I use a red pen, make it smaller. It means oxygenated. And it means that it has lots of O2. It's okay, put it back on. Because put it back on your ears. Sorry. Okay, so coming back to it, we are going to start on the left side of the page. Okay, so on the left side of the page, we have this structure located at the top here. This is termed my vena cava. Now, since this is at the top, this is called the superior vena cava. Those are R's, not V's. So we have superior vena cava. The superior term means above. Okay, so in bio or in anatomy, anytime you have superior, it means on top. Inferior means below. So that being said, I'm going to go to this bottom of the heart, this blood vessel that's here. This is also the vena cava. Okay, but since it's at the bottom, it's the inferior vena cava. So inferior means below, superior means above. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to also want to shade in the fact that this is deoxygenated blood. Okay. The superior vena cava is a vein because it is pumping blood to the heart. So I'm going to give you a lot of extra info here. I recommend you jot down like little notes for yourself. Okay, off to the side on a separate piece of paper, wherever you so choose. So superior vena cava is a vein. It is actually the biggest vein in the body. Okay, and it is supplying blood to the heart. So the superior vena cava will carry blood from the arms and the head, or bring blood back from the arms and the head, whereas the inferior vena cava is bringing blood from the lower body, so your legs and your torso. Okay, I'm going to follow the pathway that blood would, I'm going to be doing the labeling as if we're following the pathway in the heart. So the next stop in the heart is this structure located right here. Okay, so I'm shading it in blue because I know it's blue blood, deoxygenated blood. This structure is called the right atrium. Okay, Now, this sounds kind of weird because if you're looking at your piece of paper, this is the left side of the paper. But when we look at anatomy, it's as if it is your structure, or it's as if it's your own organ. So if you were to lay on the table and you're looking at your heart, this is your right side. Okay. So it's always backwards in the body. So uh, the right atrium or the right side of the heart is on the left side of the page because it's as if you're laying on the table. The atrium, the term atrium means receiving blood. So it is receiving blood from somewhere else. So blood is coming into the heart. This is known as a chamber, okay, because you'll notice that it can fill with blood. So this chamber, there are actually only 4 chambers located within the heart. Okay, you can see the first one, and then you can see 4 other almost chambers, one below here. You can kind of see my pen moving. You have another one located on the left side, which is the right side of your paper, and then you have another one up top here. Okay, so atriums are located on top. Okay, and then you will follow the blood as it is moving down. Okay, so we have blood moving through the heart, we're vena cava, to the right atrium. Now we go through this structure located right here. This structure is actually a valve. Valves are really important in the body. Okay, we have valves located in the veins, just like in veins, they're preventing backflow. Okay, we want blood to flow one way. So the reason why we have valves located throughout the body is to prevent the blood from going backwards. So each one of the valves in the heart has a specific name. So the one valve that is located here is actually called the tricuspid valve. Now, the reason why this one is called the tricuspid valve is because it actually has 3 flaps. Okay, so tri representing 3. So the tricuspid valve is preventing backflow as blood is moving from the first chamber to the second chamber. Okay, the other term that we use for the tricuspid valve is known as the atrioventricular valve. And I want you to write this one down. So I'm going to go up top and put like a little legend up top. Okay, so I'm going to put a little dot here because that's a dot. Atrioventricular valve. Now, if I look at the name, there's 2 sort of name in that first word. There's 2 root words in that name. Atrio is very similar to atrium. So these are valves located between the atrium. And then the second part tells you ventricular. So that gives you a hint of what the next chamber is called, ventricle. So any valve that is located between an atrium and a ventricle is technically called an atrioventricular valve, but we have different names for specific valves located in the heart. So the atrioventricular valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle is called the tricuspid valve or the tricuspid atrioventricular valve. You could see any one of those on a test. Okay, I just got to scroll down. So my next stop on the heart is my right ventricle. So I had blood moving through this through this valve, and now we're in this chamber. This big chamber, it's a huge chamber, is called my right ventricle. Now, the term ventricle means bottom chambers, okay, or lower chambers. So the chambers that are located lower in the heart are your ventricles. The ones higher up are your atriums. Now, if I follow this pathway, Okay, you will notice that the only place that it can go next, because it's not going to go backwards, blood only flows in one direction in the body, is it needs to go out this blood vessel right here. So this is a huge blood vessel. Okay, and then it branches to the left, which is the right side of the paper, and then it goes in behind this circular structure, this semicircular structure, okay, off to the side over here. Okay, this structure is known as your pulmonary. Now it's going away from the heart, so artery. Now, technically, this one is going to be your left pulmonary artery because it's on the left side. And then this one over here will be your right pulmonary artery. Okay, so this one will go to the right lung. This one will go to the left lung. Now, the structure over here in the middle is actually called your pulmonary trunk. You may see it on some diagrams, but as long as you know your pulmonary arteries left and right, that should be okay. But if you noticed, right here is another valve. This valve is called the semilunar valve. Now, this semilunar valve is located as blood is leaving the heart. So the ventricles are actually pumping blood out of the heart, whereas the atriums are receiving the blood. So another way to know the difference between an atrium and a ventricle is by what's happening with regards to the blood. So the atriums receive the blood, ventricles pump the blood out of the heart. So the semilunar valve, there are two of them located in the heart. One's at the exit of the right ventricle, and then the other one, if you look down here, right here, where my little pen is going, is my semilunar valve located in my left ventricle. Okay, so now pulmonary arteries. Important about the pulmonary arteries, I'm just going to change my color so I can just, maybe I'll do green. Okay, so the important thing about the pulmonary arteries is that they are sending blood to lungs. So I'm going to put to lungs. And I'm going to put that over here, to lungs. Now, what happens in the lungs? Okay, lungs are important for gas exchange. So if I have blue blood, deoxygenated blood going to the lungs, then that means it has to come out of the lungs as oxygenated. Now, we know our pathway of blood through the, at least part of the body, according to the respiratory system. We learned the pulmonary artery and we learned the pulmonary vein. So the blood that's leaving the lungs should be coming back to the heart through the pulmonary veins. Okay, so now I need to change my color to red because now I am going to be oxygenated blood. So right below my two pulmonary arteries here, I have my pulmonary veins. So this is a pulmonary vein. This is my left pulmonary vein. Okay, and it's coming from the left lung. So now I can shade in this as red because it's red. Off to the right-hand side, you'll see two similar looking blood vessels. This is my right pulmonary vein. And this is coming from the right lung. Okay, both the right pulmonary vein and the left pulmonary vein are going to drain into this upper chamber right here. So if it were receiving blood, then that means it has to be received in through an atrium. So we already have a right atrium, so this one has to be the left atrium. Following the blood down, okay, we have to move through this structure right here. So there's another valve. There are 4 valves located in the body. This one is, in the heart, not the body. There's lots of valves in the body, but in the heart there are only 4. This one is located between an atrium and a ventricle, so that means that this has to be an atrioventricular valve as well. But the name of this one is the bicuspid valve because it actually only has two flaps. So I'm going to put a little dot beside it because the dot means it's an atrioventricular valve. Okay, and then these are ligaments that are holding and allowing that valve to open and close based on what the ventricle is doing. You are going to see this in your dissection. Okay, so you're actually gonna be able to physically see the valves in your heart dissection. So your next stop in the heart is this big structure located right here. So this is this line right here. So this whole chamber is called your left ventricle. Now your left ventricle is going to pump blood out of the heart. So it can't go back this way. So this is a little bit hard to understand and see because you don't see the 3D structure here. So you see a valve located right here, which is a semilunar valve. This valve will open up to a blood vessel located behind this pulmonary trunk, and it goes whoop, and then it comes up here. Okay, this is a huge artery. Okay, and it branches up top here into three bigger arteries. So this is known as your aorta. Your aorta is your largest artery in the body. This is extremely high pressure. This ventricle would have contracted with extreme force, which then pushes the blood into this next part of the heart known as the aorta. So that means all of the force that was exerted by this left atrium is now in this blood vessel located right here. So this is why your arteries need to be extremely thick and muscular so that they can withstand the force or that pressure that's being, I guess you could say, given to them from that heart. Now, these three blood vessels up here are going to pump blood up to the upper body. Okay, and if you think about what's higher than your heart, that's important. Your brain. Your brain is really, really important. It needs oxygen, which means that you need to send a butt ton of oxygenated blood to the brain so that you can supply oxygen to that ever important brain that's telling your body to do everything all the time. You also have part of the aorta, which branches, and this rest of this semicircle, sorry, goes down and behind the heart, and it actually comes out down here. Okay, so it's a blood vessel. This is just also your aorta, and your aorta will go down the center of your body and then branch from there into smaller arteries. So this is your heart, or your different structures of the heart. Just need to pause the video for a second to deal with Zeta. So I'm going to use a different color pen to show the direction that blood is actually flowing through the heart. So I'm going to maybe pick orange, will be a little bit hard. I'll use a green again. So we know that blood came in through the ventricles here, or through the vena cava. It came through, actually, I'll make it a bit thicker here. So it came through the vena cava into the right atrium, and then it goes into the right ventricle. Then it comes out and it goes to the lungs. I should pick maybe orange or something. Okay. And then the oxygenated blood comes back from the lungs into the left atrium, goes into the left ventricle, and then it comes out through the aorta to the body. Okay. Back to red. And now, oops, sorry guys. Okay, so the question at the bottom says, what do valves do in the heart? So their job is to prevent backflow. We want the blood to flow one way. So by having all of these blood vessels or all of these valves located throughout the heart and the body, it's allowing the blood to move one direction. Now, do you think that you're going to get the exact same diagram every time? Probably not. There's going to be subtle differences here. Um, Now, you'll still have your four chambers. The labels will all be the same, but it'll always be a different diagram. So this means you're going to have a labeling quiz. The one thing that I'm missing in my labeling is this structure, which you don't color as red or blue because it's this structure located in the middle. So right here, this is a muscle that we call the septum. The septum is simply dividing the left and the right sides of the heart. So what it's preventing is it's preventing the red and the blue blood from mixing, so that we can maintain efficiency of blood flow throughout our body. So that being said, on the next page, it's asking you, to draw in the different circuits located in the body. So now this is where we have the different connections between the different parts of the body. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what these different pathways are, and then we'll combine them together. So the coronary pathway. The coronary pathway, the term coronary means heart. So it's the pathway, blood flows in heart. I'm going to change my color 3 times because I want to do this with purpose. Okay, and they're not going to be red and blue. Systemic pathway. This means body. Okay, so pathway, blood flows through body. Okay, now keep in mind, if it's going through the heart, it's a coronary pathway. And then I'm going to change my color one more time, and I guess I'll pick pink. Okay, pulmonary. We should know pulmonary means lungs. So this is talking about the pathway, blood flows to and from lungs. Pathways to and from lungs. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine all 3 of the pathways along with whether or not the blood is oxygenated or deoxygenated. Now I'm going to start at the vena cava. So according to my diagram previously, the vena cava was deoxygenated blood. So what I'm going to get out is my blue pen. Okay, and I'm going to scroll down here. This is going to be a very long pathway. Okay, so I'm just going to make my view page width. Okay, here we go. So we're going to start at the vena cava. Now we get to shorten our vena cava sometimes to VC, being vena cava. I am okay when you do your labeling that if instead of writing vena cava, you put VC. So vena cava goes into the right atrium. From the right atrium, we go into the right ventricle. Now, along the way, we pass through the tricuspid valve. Okay, so from the right ventricle, we go to the pulmonary artery, and we go through the semilunar valve. So I'm going to write semilunar. And then we actually go to the capillaries located within the lungs. Capillaries are important because that is where gas exchange happens. So that means that my pen should change in the capillary network from blue to red because we're being oxygenated. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little note to myself below that this is gas exchange. Okay, so now I have my red pen. So now I need to get back to the heart. So now I need the pulmonary, and if you're going back to the heart, you're going in a pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein will drain into the left atrium and move into the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, we go out the aorta. Now, between those, we also have valves. So between the left atrium and the left ventricle, we have the bicuspid valve. Between the left ventricle and the aorta, we have your other semilunar valve. Now, the artery is the aorta is the biggest artery in the body. So that means the aorta will branch into smaller arteries. There are many different arteries located in the body. You don't need to know all of the names of them, but for example, there's a renal artery, there's a carotid artery, brachial artery, etc. But you do not need to know all of those names. You just need to know that they branch into smaller arteries. And all of those arteries will eventually branch into a smaller arteriole, which will then go into a capillary bed. Now, a capillary bed, again, we have gas exchange, which means that my color of pen should change from red now to blue, because what's happening is the oxygen is leaving and the carbon dioxide is entering. So you can put below that gas exchange. I'll do that actually. So we have gas exchange. Now, on the opposite end of a capillary bed, we have a venule. The venule will drain into a bigger vein, and then the biggest vein in the entire body is your vena cava. Now, remember, your vena cava is both superior and inferior, or has a superior and inferior part. So if you're coming from the top of the body, it'll go through the superior vena cava. If you're coming from the bottom part of the body, it is your inferior vena cava. Now to color code based on the type of circuit. Oh, I forget my color, so I have to go back up here. So pink was our pulmonary circuit. So I'm going to change my pen to pink. So anytime it mentions something about the lungs, I'm going to underline it in pink. I'm going to make my line a bit bigger so it's clearly able to be seen. So pulmonary artery, and notice I'm only doing half, okay, because the pulmonary artery is actually attached to the heart as well. So pulmonary artery going into your capillary bed located in your lungs, and I'm going to put this is in your lungs, okay, going into your pulmonary vein. Now your pulmonary vein was also in the diagram of the heart, so then that means that it's also connected to your coronary circuit, okay. Now I know orange is my color of the body, so I'm going to change it to orange right now. So the body. So the aorta is sending the blood to the body. So that means half of here will be body. Going into your arteries is also the body, okay? Because it branches into lower part of the body and upper part of the body. Then the arteriole going into your capillary bed of the body, then your venule and your vein. Your vena cava is bringing blood back from the body. So that means part of it is going to be the systemic circuit, okay? But the vena cava is also in your heart diagram. So that means it is also part of your coronary pathway. So some of these labels will be part of both coronary and systemic or coronary and pulmonary. Sorry, I just had to check what color I picked the coronary to be. And I wish I didn't pick green, but it is what it is. Okay, so now we're going to green to represent our coronary pathway. So everything that we haven't underlined is coronary. So we go from aorta, left ventricle, left atrium, and part of that pulmonary vein because it's attached in the heart. That's going to be their coronary circuit. Your vena cava going all the way to your pulmonary artery is also your coronary or your coronary pathway or coronary circuit. Okay, what I encourage you to do now is go back and try to label the external structures of the heart. The only thing that is on the external structure of the heart that I did not talk about was the coronary arteries and veins. Okay, so I'm going to mention that right now, but the rest you should be able to label, and we can try to label another day. But I'm going to see if I can just type this in. Okay. Okay, so coronary arteries and veins are found on the surface of the heart, and they supply oxygen to the heart muscle itself in order to allow the muscle to create ATP so that it can contract. So these coronary arteries and veins are found on the surface of the heart, and they're super important because the blood moving through the heart doesn't supply the heart with any oxygen. So you have to have these arteries and veins located on the surface of the heart. So I'm kind of highlighting them so that you can see them. Sorry about Zayden in the background. He is on Tylenol right now. So these are supplying oxygen to the heart muscle itself so that the heart can actually contract. If there is a blockage in this, any one of these blood vessels, so for example, if there was a blockage, I'm going to just change my highlighter for a second. I'm going to change it to this lime green. If there was a blockage right here, that means oxygen is not getting to this lower half of the heart, which means that the lower half of the heart is not getting oxygen. It cannot contract. It cannot create ATP to allow contraction. And if you can't contract, then the heart is not pumping. So this can lead to things like a heart attack. Okay, once you have labeled this, what I suggest you do is scroll to, or you're not scrolling, flip to page 14 in your notes package. So pathways of circulatory system, you can fill out this page. Describe the function. I highly encourage you to do this based on what we talked about in the notes package. As I was talking about the different parts of the heart, what they do, what is their function, where do they go, etc. So for example, superior vena cava, I would write in something along the lines of collecting blood from the body, upper body, sorry, biggest vein in the body, okay, pumps blood to the right atrium. So I would jot down all of those things. You should do this for your own benefit. I'm not going to take it in for marks, okay, but you have lots of time right now to do so. So take the time to do it in class. Good luck.